Let's talk to Marco Longhi about a real story. Marco, very good morning to you, or good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon to you. How are you?
Very well indeed. I said that you were one of the people who had very much sort of led the way on this migrant story for a very long time. You and I have spoken many times about the need to curtail this ridiculous onslaught of the little boats, which have got bigger and bigger and bigger over the years. We've now got a tenfold increase in the numbers coming since just 3 years ago. Do you think this can work? I mean, to me, it's the most imaginative sort of announcement yet.
I'm an optimist, Mike, and I will always want to support every possible endeavour to make sure that we bring an end to this absolute human misery. It's a misery for the very people that are coming over. We don't know how many people actually lose their lives or come to harm from the country they leave all the way up to Calais. We only know of those who tragically might lose their lives in the Channel itself, but it's a misery for the rest of the country who see this as incredibly unfair. I have queues of constituents coming to my surgeries, desperate for housing, desperate for public services to work, and they do not, because either they are taken up by others, principally people who arrive here illegally, or actually the money that they are seeing being used, spent £7 million a day on this is a complete nonsense when they see that, well, you know, shouldn't we be paying our nurses more money, for example? And that's a completely separate conversation, isn't it? You know, so this needs to stop. So I'm completely against people like Gary Lineker and even the Archbishop Justin Welby, who live in a world of their own, completely cocooned from the real world, and just do not understand what real people think.
Well, do you know, I'd have a bit more time for Archbishop Welby if he was willing to donate some of the millions of acres of land and housing that the Church of England actually owns and runs in this country, and said, OK, well, why don't we house some of these migrants who are coming to our shores in Church of England properties? But he lives in a palace, and he's not interested in that.
Oh, quite. And he should be perhaps asking himself why it is that we are seeing an increasingly secular society and the pews increasingly empty, and that is because the church does not reflect what ordinary people think and want to hear. And you're quite right. They should be looking to put their money where their mouth is, and aren't they the ones who are professing all the time how we should be doing this, that and the other, you know, and let them do that. Why don't they do that? I think that's a jolly good idea.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not really interested in what Gary Lineker has to say, but what I am interested in is the BBC's continued insistence that he's not going to be disciplined for all of these outbursts, right? Clearly, the BBC, whatever anybody says, has got its own agenda about this government, and quite frankly, the idea that he hides behind being a football commentator and not a news person, they've got him all over their news site on the web, BBC Online, is full of stories about Gary Lineker and what he said. He also went to Qatar and did a programme about the human rights abuses by the Qatari government. So that, to me, makes him not any longer a sports commentator, and I wonder whether the BBC might feel some pressure from you guys.
It is absolutely, it stinks of rank hypocrisy, doesn't it? You know, it's awful, and it just reinforces that message amongst many politicians, myself included, that the BBC under its current governance is absolutely not fit for purpose. How can you possibly compare the worst atrocity in human history, Nazi Germany, to what we are trying to do, which is actually being kinder to the people that we are talking about, by actually saying, look, this is a deterrent. We don't, you know, if you come to the UK legally, you will be removed. And what will happen? They will just stop coming. That will save people's lives. And, you know, Welby and Lineker just don't understand that. No. They like to virtue signal on the back of the taxpayer.
But let's not forget, there are also an awful lot of people making an awful lot of money here. We've got legal aid for people who come here, who want to stay here, who can lose their case at asylum level and then take on the courts systems through the purposes of being funded by the taxpayer. You've got charities which are funded not only by the taxpayer but also by government money, right, who take on the government, who put welcome packages on beaches, who tell people exactly how they can manoeuvre their story into staying in this country. You know, they might not be helping them come here, but they're certainly helping them once they get here.
Absolutely, and my good friend Lee Anderson visited Calais only a few weeks ago. I wasn't able to go myself, and he just came back absolutely outraged with stories that I just could not believe. Care for Calais, again, you know, trying to come across as virtue-signaling and altruistic organisation. All they are doing is actually aiding the people smugglers' business model by encouraging more and more people to come and undertake this very, very perilous and dangerous journey, which is completely wrong for them and is completely wrong for the British taxpayer in so many other ways. And I would invite people like you know, the people who run these charities and like to make these political statements, or even Gary Lineker. Why don't you come and stand in a constituency like Dudley, stand against me on that very message?
Yeah.
Let's see how your politics goes at the ballot box, because that's the place to do it, not at the back of the taxpayers', you know, platform or on any other platform that you've construed and has perhaps made you the figure that you are.
Yes, absolutely right. I think that's a very good gauntlet to throw down to these bozos, because quite frankly, and I know you can't call them that, but I can, you know, they need to put their money where their mouths are. You know, Gary Lineker claims that he housed a Syrian refugee. Well, good luck to him if that's what he did. But I doubt that he's going to be doing that as a general principle. But let's talk about another story that's been massively big in the papers this week, Marco, the lockdown files. The Daily Telegraph has obtained a lot of these Matt Hancock WhatsApp messages. Doesn't put him in a very good light, doesn't put many of his advisors in a very good light. I don't know if you've been mentioned in them at all, but what do you make of it all?
Well, I mean, I'm just appalled by it all. I really very much regret that Matt felt the need to go to a journalist and do what he did. I very much then regret that the journalist felt that they needed to take that and put it in the court of public opinion in that way. There is a separate place to handle these things. I'm shocked by what happened and extremely disappointed. Because in the initial stages of the lockdown period, I actually felt that Matt did a half-decent job. But if what appears to be coming through on these WhatsApp messages and other platforms, then I'm sorry, I cannot be on his side, and I very much regret that he's done what he's done.
I think so, and I think that will damage Matt Hancock's legacy, whatever he thought it was going to be. It certainly is now going to be this, and it's going to be the way that he conducted himself, the way that he thought he could treat not only members of the public, but even fellow backbench Tory MPs. I mean, the thing that appalled me, and we spoke to him the other day, James Daly, was that, you know, he was willing to put individual Tory MPs under pressure to vote with the government, or they would have funding taken away from them.
Well, obviously, had I known that that was happening, I would have not remained silent.
No.
And I'm very sorry.
Nobody did. I mean, nobody knew.
James.
I mean,
he's a very good MP.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I spoke to James about it the other day, and even he didn't know that that was what they were discussing, because it never actually happened. But the fact that they were discussing it alone was terrible.
Exactly. I completely agree. I mean, it's completely unacceptable, and it just feels that the more that comes out, there needs to be a proper, thorough investigation, a post-mortem, if you like, of what's actually happened throughout that period. It's just completely unacceptable. This is the machinery of government being exposed in a way that it's never been exposed before. And I'm just, it's incredibly regrettable. What else? It makes you wonder, what else does the government machine do that politicians like me are held accountable for at the ballot box when we are thinking we're doing the right thing, when the motivations behind it perhaps might be completely wrong? Exactly
right. Given that the lefties blame you lot for everything, when are you going to make the weather better?
I was wondering about that. They do blame us for everything, don't they? You know, but
they actually do. But listen,
well, I've just given a speech at. you know, at a Brazilian delegation, and all the Brazilians are coming over, and they didn't complain about the weather, but the British diplomats that were based in Brazil were all complaining about the weather here in Britain. What does that tell you?
That tells you an awful lot about being British, doesn't it? You have to talk about the weather. Marco, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Have a good weekend. Marco Longhi, Conservative MP for Dudley North.